I was sitting in the rear turret when I felt the first impact. It wasn't the sound that alerted me. It was the way the metal vibrated beneath my hands, as if the aircraft itself had groaned in pain. 23 years old, and I already knew the difference between turbulence and approaching death. That was death. Coming fast. My name is Edward. Rear gunner of a Lancaster from the Royal Air Force. The loneliest position in the sky. The coldest. The most deadly. They called us Tail End Charlie, the last to see the enemy arrive, the first to die when they came. 30 missions. I'd completed 30 missions over occupied Europe. 7 more and I'd be free. I could go home. To my mother in Yorkshire. To the green hills that didn't have fire falling from the sky. That was Mission 31. Berlin. Always Berlin. The city that never slept, that never stopped firing. We flew in tight formation, dozens of bombers cutting through the night like a swarm of mechanical insects. The roar of the engines was constant, hypnotic. Inside my glass turret, isolated from the rest of the crew by meters of fuselage and darkness, I watched. Always watching. I saw when the fighter appeared. A Messerschmitt. It emerged from the shadows below us like a shark rising from the depths. My machine gun was already trained before my brain registered the danger. Instinct. 30 missions teach instinct. I squeezed the trigger. Red tracers cut through the night. Too short. Too far left. The Messerschmitt rolled, climbed, disappeared. Fighter at 6 o'clock, I warned over the intercom. My voice sounded strangely calm. I didn't recognize it. Messerschmitt. Lost visual. Silence on the radio. Then Commander Davies's voice. Maintain positions. 15 minutes to target. 15 minutes. 900 seconds. I counted each one. My eyes swept the black sky, searching for what I knew was there. Waiting. Hunting. The cold in the turret was brutal. -40 degrees. My hands were numb even inside the gloves. But I couldn't stop watching. Couldn't blink. He came back. Not alone. 3 of them now. They came from below, where bombers are most vulnerable, where the Lancaster's belly is just thin aluminium. I saw the flashes from their guns. I heard the sound, that terrible sound of metal tearing metal. The Lancaster shuddered violently. Alarms sounded. Smoke. I smelt it before I saw it. Acrid. Chemical. Engine on fire. Engine 3 on fire. The flight engineer's voice, Thompson, sounded tense. Trying to extinguish. I kept firing. Short bursts. Conserving ammunition. One of the fighters passed so close I saw the pilot's face. Young. Perhaps younger than me. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. Then he was gone, rolling away from my tracers. That's when the second attack came. This time they hit something vital. The Lancaster tilted violently to the left. I lost my balance in the turret. My head struck the glass. I saw stars that weren't stars. Warm blood ran down my forehead. "We've lost hydraulic control," Davies shouted. "Prepare to abandon aircraft." I repeat, prepare to bail out. Bail out. The word echoed in my head. It meant leaving the turret, crawling back through the narrow fuselage, grabbing my parachute, finding the hatch. It meant leaving my post. Leaving the crew vulnerable whilst the fighters still circled. I looked back through the fuselage. I saw flames. I saw smoke. I saw the navigator, young Peterson, moving towards the hatch. But I also saw the fighters. Returning. Preparing another attack. If I left now, if everyone left, the Lancaster would be defenseless. An easy target. Some of the crew were still in there. Still trying to save the aircraft. Still fighting. Davies. Thompson. The bomb aimer Harris. Men I'd flown 30 missions with. Men who knew my brothers' names. Who knew how my mother made apple pie. I made a decision. I didn't think much. There wasn't time to think. I just knew. "I'll cover you," I spoke into the intercom. My voice was strangely steady. "Get out. I'll keep the fighters away." "Edward, no," Davies responded. "That's an order. Get out now." With all due respect, sir, I replied, I'm not getting out. Silence on the radio. Then, God protect you, Edward. And that was it. I heard the sounds. Bodies moving. Metal against metal. The hatch opening. The wind howling. One by one, they jumped. They plunged into the night. Into uncertainty. But alive. Still alive. And I stayed. Alone in the burning sky, with only my machine guns and a dying aircraft. The fighters returned. I was ready. That night, in the frozen solitude of that glass turret, I made a choice that would change everything. What happened in the following minutes, the decisions I made, the faces I saw for the last time, it haunts me to this day. Some say I was a hero. Others that I was foolish. But the truth is buried in that sky, that night, and only those who were there can truly understand. If you want to know why only one of us came back, why the letters I wrote were never sent, you need to hear the rest. Because it wasn't just about surviving. It was about the price of a choice. Subscribe to the channel. You'll need to be prepared for what's coming. The Lancaster was falling. Not plummeting, but descending in a slow spiral, like an autumn leaf. Except leaves don't weigh 30 tons and aren't on fire. Through the glass of my turret, I saw the earth below. Lights. Cities. Life happening whilst I died in the sky. The first fighter attacked again. Came from above this time. I saw him coming. Trained my guns. Waited. Patience was everything. My instructor, Sergeant Williams, used to say, 1 second of patience is worth 10 of ammunition. I waited until I felt the right moment. Then I pressed. The machine guns roared. I saw my tracers meet their target. Sparks. Black smoke. The Messerschmitt rolled violently, dived, disappeared into the clouds below. Shot down. Damaged. It didn't matter. He was away from me. But there were more. There were always more. 2 fighters now, coordinating their attack. One drew my attention whilst the other struck from the side. Old tactic. Effective. I split my fire between them. Short bursts. Conserving ammunition. How many rounds did I have left? I didn't know. Didn't want to know. The Lancaster tilted more steeply. The controls must have been completely lost. How long until we hit the ground? 5 minutes. 10. I calculated mentally. Altitude. Rate of descent. Not much time. Not enough time. It was then that I realized something. The radio was silent. Completely silent. No commands. No conversation. Just static. I tried to transmit. Davies. Thompson. Does anyone copy? Nothing. Either everyone had jumped, or I didn't want to think about the alternative. I looked back again through the fuselage. Through the smoke and flames, I saw something move. A figure. Someone was still there. My heart leapt. Is anyone there? I shouted. But my voice didn't carry through the roar of the engines and the wind. I needed to decide. Leave the turret. Check. Or stay. Continue defending. The fighters decided for me. They returned. More aggressive now. They knew the Lancaster was mortally wounded. It was just a matter of time. They wanted to finish the job. I fired until my guns overheated. Until the ammunition ran out. Click. 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 Empty. Sudden silence. After so much noise, so much chaos, the silence was frightening. Just the groan of the engines. The whistle of the wind. And my own heartbeat, far too loud. The fighters circled. Waiting. They knew. There was no more defense. We were easy targets now. I closed my eyes. Thought of home. Of the hills. Of my mother's apple pie. Of all the tomorrows I wouldn't see. But the shots didn't come. I opened my eyes. The fighters were moving away. Returning to base. Out of ammunition too. Or simply letting gravity do the work. It didn't matter. They were going. I breathed. A deep, trembling breath. Then I moved. Released the straps. Opened the turret door. crawled out. The fuselage was chaos. Fire. Smoke. Twisted metal. The heat hit me like a physical wall after the freezing cold of the turret. My face felt scorched. My lungs burned with each breath. I advanced, shouting, "Anyone? Is anyone here?" The smoke was thick, choking. I pulled my scarf over my nose and mouth, but it barely helped. My eyes streamed with tears. I couldn't see more than a meter ahead. The aircraft groaned around me, metal stress fracturing, rivets popping like gunshots. How much longer would she hold together? Every creak, every shudder felt like a death knell. I found him near the hatch. Harris, the bomb aimer. He was trapped. A piece of metal had gone through his leg, pinning him to the floor. The shard was as thick as my thumb, protruding from both sides of his calf. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading. His face was pale, sheened with sweat despite the cold. His eyes met mine. There was pain in them. Terror. But also relief. "Edward," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I thought you were dead." "Not yet," I replied, already working to free him. My hands fumbled with the metal. It was hot, searing my palms even through my gloves. I gritted my teeth against the pain. The metal was wedged tight, bent at an angle that made it nearly impossible to extract. Harris watched me work, his breathing shallow and rapid. Shock was setting in. I could see it in his eyes, in the way his pupils had dilated. "You need to leave me," he said suddenly. "Save yourself. There's not enough time." "Shut up," I cut him off, more harshly than I intended. "I'm not leaving anyone." I pulled harder. The metal shifted slightly. Harris cried out, a sharp, agonized sound that cut through the roar of the wind and engines. "I'm sorry," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm so bloody sorry." I braced my foot against the fuselage and pulled with everything I had. My muscles screamed. My hands slipped, raw and bleeding now. The aircraft lurched suddenly, throwing me off balance. We were losing altitude faster. Much faster. The ground was rushing up to meet us. I could feel it in my bones. With a final, desperate wrench, the metal came free. Harris screamed again, then immediately bit down on it, swallowing the sound. Blood flowed more freely now, but he was loose. Free. I tore a strip from my own jacket, wrapped it tight around his leg. It wasn't much. Wouldn't be enough if we didn't get him proper medical attention soon. But it was all I could do. "You need to jump," I said, helping him to his feet, or rather, his one good foot. He leaned heavily against me, his weight threatening to topple us both. "Now. Right now." "And you?" he asked, his voice tight with pain. I could see the question in his eyes. The terrible understanding dawning there. "I'll be right behind you." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. We both knew the truth. I could see it in the way Harris looked at me. The altitude was too low now. The altimeter on the bulkhead read 800 feet. Maybe less. The needle was jumping erratically. A parachute needed time to deploy. Space to open. Height to slow the descent. Harris had a chance. Barely. But a chance. I wouldn't have even that much. I helped him to the hatch. The opening yawned like a black mouth, wind screaming through it with hurricane force. The slipstream tugged at our clothes, our hair, trying to suck us out. Below was nothing but darkness. No way to see what lay beneath. Trees. Buildings. Water. It was a leap of pure faith. Or pure desperation. "Edward," Harris gripped my arm with surprising strength. His fingers dug into my sleeve. His eyes were full of things unsaid. 1,000 words compressed into a single moment. Fear. Gratitude. Guilt. Brotherhood. All of it passing between us in silence. "Thank you. For everything. For all 31 missions. For this." His voice cracked. "Tell my wife. Tell Sarah." "You'll tell her yourself," I interrupted, gently but firmly prying his fingers loose. "You'll go home. You'll see her again. You'll have that life you talked about. The farm in Devon. The children. All of it." I managed a smile, though it felt like a grimace. "But you need to jump. Now. Before it's too late. Harris hesitated one more moment. Then nodded. He positioned himself at the hatch, awkward with his injured leg. Took a breath. "See you on the other side, Edward," he said. "Wherever that is." "See you there," I replied. And with that, I pushed him gently. He fell into the darkness and was instantly swallowed by it. Gone. I stared after him, watching the void, willing his parachute to open. Praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Please. Please let him make it. I stood there for what felt like minutes but was probably only seconds. The Lancaster screamed around me, protesting every moment it stayed in the air. She was dying. I could feel her dying. This magnificent machine that had carried us through 30 missions, through flak and fighters and frozen nights, was breathing her last. I was truly alone now. Completely alone. The realization hit me like a physical blow. No crew. No support. No orders to follow or men to protect. Just me and this dying aircraft and the rapidly approaching ground. I should have felt terror. Should have panicked. But instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Acceptance, perhaps. Or exhaustion. Or something else entirely. I made my way back to my turret. My post. Moving through the smoke-filled fuselage one last time. If I was going to die, and I knew that with absolute certainty now, I would die where I belonged. In my position. At my guns. Where I'd spent so many hours, so many frozen nights, watching the darkness for threats. It seemed fitting, somehow. Poetic, even, though I'd never been one for poetry. I climbed back into the turret. The seat felt familiar, comfortable even. Like coming home after a long journey. I strapped myself in with practiced efficiency. Checked my instruments out of habit, though they no longer mattered. Settled my hands on the gun controls, though there was nothing left to shoot at. I looked out through the glass. The earth was very close now. Too close. I could see individual trees. Fields. A road snaking through the darkness. Details I shouldn't be able to see. Details that meant we had seconds, not minutes. The Lancaster was in a steep dive now, falling like a stone. The wind screamed. The metal groaned. And I sat in my glass bubble, watching the end rush towards me. I thought of my mother. Of Yorkshire. Of the life I'd lived, short though it had been, and the life I'd never have. 23 years. Was that enough? It would have to be. I thought of the crew. Davies and his awful jokes. Thompson and his letters to his sweetheart. Peterson, so young, barely 19. And Harris, falling through the darkness above me, hopefully drifting safely to Earth. I'd saved him at least. That had to count for something. I closed my eyes. And waited for the impact. The impact never came. At least, not as I expected. The Lancaster touched the ground, but she didn't shatter. She dragged. Through fields. Through soft earth. Tearing, breaking, but not exploding. I was thrown against the straps. Glass shattered around me in a cascade of crystalline fragments. Metal screamed, a sound like nothing I'd ever heard, like the aircraft herself was crying out in agony. And then, silence. Impossible silence after so much noise. It took me a moment to understand. I was alive. I shouldn't have been, but I was. The realization came slowly, filtered through shock and disbelief. My hands were still gripping the gun controls, knuckles white, fingers locked. I had to consciously force them to release. I checked my body methodically, the way we'd been trained. Pain everywhere, but nothing seemed broken. My ribs ached, bruised, perhaps cracked, but not shattered. Blood on my face. I touched it tentatively. Couldn't tell if it was mine or if it had splattered from somewhere else during the chaos. It didn't matter. I tried to move. The straps were jammed, buckles twisted from the impact. I pulled. Fought against them. Panic began to rise in my chest like water filling a sinking ship. What if the fire reached the fuel tanks? An explosion was only a matter of time. All that aviation fuel, all those remaining bombs in the bay if they hadn't been jettisoned. One spark and I'd be vaporized. My fingers fumbled with the release mechanisms, slippery with blood and sweat. Come on. Come on. Finally, one strap gave way. Then another. I fell awkwardly out of the turret, landing heavily on what had been the side of the fuselage but was now the ground. The Lancaster was on her side, half buried in ploughed earth. The impact had torn a furrow through the field like a giant plough itself had carved a path. Thick smoke poured from multiple points along the fuselage. The acrid smell of burning oil, rubber, and something else, something chemical and poisonous, filled my lungs. I coughed violently, each spasm sending spikes of pain through my chest. The smell of aviation fuel was overwhelming. It pooled on the ground, reflecting the first hints of dawn light. So much fuel. Too much. I needed to get out. Fast. I crawled. Each movement was agony. My left ankle screamed with pain when I tried to put weight on it. Sprained, maybe broken. Didn't matter. I dragged myself forward, using my arms, my good leg, anything to propel myself away from the wreckage. Found an opening where the fuselage had torn like paper. Squeezed through. Twisted metal caught at my clothes, my skin, tearing both. I didn't care. Just kept moving. Fresh air. Cold, clean, beautiful air. I gulped it down like a drowning man breaking the surface. My lungs burned, but it was the good kind of burn. The alive kind. I kept crawling, putting distance between myself and the Lancaster. 10 meters. 20. My arms trembled with exhaustion. Just a bit further. 30 meters. I collapsed finally, rolling onto my back. Looked up at the sky. It was lightening. Dawn. The stars were fading, giving way to the pale grey that preceded sunrise. I'd survived the night. Literally, impossibly, miraculously survived. The sky that had tried so hard to kill me was now showing me its gentle morning face. The irony wasn't lost on me. I turned my head to look back at the Lancaster. She lay there like a dying beast, smoking, broken, but somehow still intact. Still whole in a way. The tail section where I'd been was recognizable. The wings, though crumpled, were still attached. She'd protected me even in death. This machine that had carried us through so many missions had given everything she had to bring me down safely. I waited, every muscle tense, for the explosion. Fuel fires didn't wait. The fire would reach the tanks. The bombs if they were still there. And it would all end in a fireball that would be visible for miles. But minutes passed. 5. 10. Nothing. The fires seemed to be dying down rather than spreading. The fuel must have drained away, soaked into the earth. Luck. Pure, blind luck. Or perhaps something else. Fate? Divine intervention. I didn't know anymore what I believed. I lay there on the cold, damp earth. The ploughed field smelled of soil and growing things. Normal smells. Peaceful smells. So strange after the chaos, the violence, the burning. I could hear birds beginning their dawn chorus. Birds. Life continuing as if the night's horrors had never happened. As if men hadn't died in the sky just hours before. I thought about the crew. Davies with his steady voice even in the worst moments. Thompson who'd wanted to be an engineer, who'd talked about building bridges after the war. Young Peterson who'd lied about his age to enlist, who'd been so proud of his navigator's wings. And Harris. God, Harris. Had his parachute opened? Had he survived the fall? Or was he lying broken somewhere in the darkness? The not knowing was worse than knowing would have been. I closed my eyes. Just for a moment. Just to rest. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving behind an exhaustion so profound I could barely form thoughts. Every part of me hurt. My body was a map of pain. But I was alive. Against all odds, all logic, all probability, I was alive. I must have passed out. Because when I opened my eyes again, the sun was higher. Not by much, perhaps half an hour had passed. But the change was noticeable. And I could hear something. Voices. Speaking German. My heart, which had finally begun to slow, suddenly hammered against my ribs with renewed terror. I forced myself to stay absolutely still. Didn't even breathe. The voices grew louder. Boots on earth. Many boots. A patrol. Of course there'd be a patrol. A bomber crash would have been visible, reported. The Germans would send soldiers to investigate. To look for survivors. To look for me. I opened one eye slightly, just a crack. Through my lashes I saw them. Uniformed soldiers. 6, maybe 8 of them. Rifles ready. They were approaching the wreckage cautiously, weapons trained on it as if the Lancaster herself might fight back. One shouted something. Another responded. They were spreading out, searching methodically. Professional. Efficient. Terrifying. Dogs. I heard barking. They'd brought dogs. Shepherds, from the sound of them. Trained to find people, to track scents. My scent. There was nowhere to run. My ankle wouldn't support me even if I tried. No cover in the plowed field. No weapons. Nothing. This was it. End of the line. I'd survived the night, the crash, everything, only to be captured now. Or shot. Would they shoot a wounded enemy airman? Some would. Some wouldn't. I had no way of knowing which kind of men these were. I prepared myself for the inevitable. Hands visible. No sudden movements. Surrender quietly. Become a prisoner of war. At least prisoners survived sometimes. At least there'd be a chance, however slim, of seeing home again someday. Better than dying in a field in occupied Europe where no one would even know where to look for my body. But then I heard something else. A different voice. Softer. Speaking German, but not with a military bark. Ist higher. Lebend. He's here. Alive. A woman. Yes, definitely a woman. I risked opening both eyes slightly. Saw a civilian figure. An old woman, maybe 60 or 70. Grey hair pulled back severely. Face weathered by time and hardship. She was looking directly at me. Our eyes met. Hers were pale blue, piercing. I saw her assess me in an instant. Saw her make a decision. She turned to the soldiers, spoke rapidly in German. Too fast for me to follow with my limited understanding of the language. But her tone was sharp, authoritative. The soldiers responded. There was a discussion. Heated, it seemed. She gestured. Insisted on something. Finally, one of the soldiers, an officer, from his insignia, nodded curtly. Gave an order. The patrol began to pull back. Moving away. Leaving. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't understand what was happening. The woman waited until they were out of sight, then approached me. Knelt beside me with surprising agility for her age. English, she asked, her accent thick but the word clear. I nodded weakly, not trusting my voice. You come, she said, switching to broken English. Quickly. Before they change minds. She helped me sit up. The world spun alarmingly. I cannot, I began. My voice was a croak, barely recognizable. My leg. You must, she cut me off firmly. There was steel in her voice. Steel and something else. Urgency. Fear, perhaps. She got her shoulder under my arm, supporting my weight. She was stronger than she looked. Or perhaps desperation gave her strength. Mine son, she murmured, almost to herself. My son. He was pilot. Killed. Over England. Shot down. You. She looked at me, and I saw tears in those pale eyes. You are someone's son too. I understood then. This wasn't about sides or uniforms or nations at war. This was personal. Grief recognizing grief. A mother who'd lost her son seeing another mother's son about to die. Some part of her wanting to save what she couldn't save before. Or perhaps just raw humanity breaking through the madness of war. I would never know her full reasons. In that moment, I didn't need to. I just needed to trust her. She guided me towards a line of trees at the field's edge. Every step was torture on my ankle. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, trying not to cry out. Behind us, I heard the soldiers returning. Voices raised. Someone had noticed I was gone. Schnell, the woman hissed. Quickly. We moved faster, as fast as my damaged body could manage. We reached the trees. She pulled me into their shadow just as I heard shouts behind us. The soldiers had found where I'd been lying. They'd know someone had helped me. They'd search. We had minutes at best. She didn't pause, didn't look back. Just kept us moving, deeper into the woods, along a path only she seemed to know. We came to a small house. Isolated. Hidden among the trees. Stone walls. Small windows. Ancient by the look of it. She pushed open a door, pulled me inside, and immediately shut it behind us. The interior was dark, cool. Smelled of wood smoke and herbs. Downstairs, she ordered, pointing to a narrow stairway. The cellar was smaller than the turret I'd spent so many hours in. Stone walls on all sides. A single small window at ground level, more ventilation than light. She helped me down, settled me on a pile of old blankets in the corner. "Stay," she commanded, as if I were one of the soldiers' dogs. "Silent. No matter what you hear. Silent." I nodded. "Why?" I started to ask. "Why are you doing this? Why risk everything?" But she was already moving back up the stairs. At the top, she paused. Looked back. "My name was Johann," she said quietly. "He was 21. You?" "Edward. 23. She nodded slowly. "Stay alive, Edward. For your mother. Someone should get to go home." And then she was gone, closing the door behind her, leaving me in the darkness. I returned to Yorkshire in 1945. The war had ended. Celebrations filled the streets. But I couldn't celebrate. My mother cried when she saw me, held my face in her hands. My boy came back. But I was no longer a boy. I was something different. Something broken that looked whole. I tried to return to normal life. Work. Friends. Routine. But the nights were impossible. I'd close my eyes and I was back in the turret. Heard the engines. Felt the cold. Saw the fighters. I'd wake up screaming. Sweating. My mother worried at the door. "It was just a nightmare, dear." But it wasn't. It was memory. I went to Davies's funeral. Then to Thompson's. Peterson was never found. Harris survived. We met once. He limped. His leg never healed properly. We looked at each other. So much to say. Nothing that could be said. "You saved my life," he finally spoke. "No," I replied. "You saved your own." Years passed. I married. Had children. Grandchildren. Life continued, as it always continues. But I always carried something. Invisible weight. Survivor. Strange word. Implies luck. Choice. But I didn't choose to survive. It just happened. And all the others didn't have the same luck. Sometimes I wonder about that German woman. The one who hid me. Who risked everything for an enemy. Why? For her son. For humanity. I'll never know. I tried to find her after the war. But the address no longer existed. The house destroyed. She disappeared like so many in that time. A gentle ghost in my past. My grandchildren ask about the war. "Grandpa, were you a hero?" I look at them. Young faces. Innocent. How to answer? "No," I say. "I was just a frightened man doing what I thought was right." "But you fought. Saved people." I tried. I didn't always succeed. I visit the cemetery sometimes. Where Davies is buried. I bring flowers. Stand there. Silent. "I'm sorry," I whisper. Why? For surviving. For not doing more. I don't know. I just feel I need to say it. The truth is this. On that night in 1943, when I chose to stay in the turret, I didn't think about heroism. I just thought about men I knew. Who trusted me. Who deserved a chance to live. I didn't save everyone. I couldn't. But I saved Harris. And perhaps that's enough. It needs to be enough. Today I'm 86 years old. White hair. Trembling hands. But I still look at the sky sometimes. Especially at night. And I see Lancasters flying. Hear engines. Feel cold. And I remember. All of them. Every name. Every face. I carry them with me. I've always carried them. I'll always carry them. Until the day I finally meet them again. And I hope they'll say, "Welcome back, Edward. You did well." Because in the end, it wasn't about glory, or medals, or recognition. It was about men caring for men. About choosing to stay when every instinct screamed to flee. About deciding that some things are worth the sacrifice. And living with that choice. Forever. There are nights when I still wake to the sound of those engines. To the cold of that turret. And I wonder whether the choice I made that night was worth all the decades of weight I carry. But then I remember Harris's face, the men who returned home, and I know there was no other option. You who have lived through wars, who know the bitter taste of impossible decisions, who carry your own invisible scars, tell me, what would you have done if the sky was falling around you and the only choice was between saving yourself or giving others a chance? Leave in the comments what this account awakened in you. The memories you'd rather forget but which defined you. The moments when you chose to stay when every instinct screamed to flee. We're not alone in this silent weight we carry. And if this story touched something deep within you, if it brought to the surface memories of when you were tested and had to decide who you truly were, subscribe to this channel. Here we honor the stories that hurt to tell but need to be remembered. The ones that show us the true cost of courage. Until the next story. Until the next account of someone who chose not to turn away when it would have been easier to do so.